Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Will. This is Exploring Photography. This is going to be kind of a little bit of a series that I'm going to start on Photoshop basics. The reason I'm doing this, these are going to be really simple videos, and the reason I'm doing this is because when I first started, I couldn't find basic videos, the ones that taught you how to do A, B, and C when you were trying to learn how to do D. So I noticed that a lot of videos on YouTube, when I went to try and learn how to do like a sky replacement or something, they expected you to know all of these different things, and I had a lot of trouble with that. It was lots of, where is it? I can't find it. And so that's why I came out with these videos. And it's gonna be like a little bit of a series. They're gonna be super basic. A lot of you guys might know this, but I figure for those who are just learning Photoshop and having those same troubles, this is probably good for you. So again, these are gonna be super basic. In this one, in episode 1, we're going to cover the selection tools. Really simple, really quick and easy. So let's jump into Photoshop and get started. All right, so we're here in Photoshop, and if you look to the left side on this area here, you'll see a bunch of tools. These are your tools for Photoshop, and obviously they're your tools for Photoshop. That was kind of obvious. Anyways, so these are the tools. Now we're gonna start with the top 5 here. Now the reason for that is because the first one is just a move tool, so it's really easy, and the last one is just the crop tool, again, really easy. So we're gonna go through these step by step, and I'm gonna give you some examples. So open Photoshop, open a photo, and follow along because it'll make it a lot easier. This first one, which is the move tool, the hotkey is V. So if you're over here on your screen and you press V, you'll automatically select that tool. Now what this allows you to do is move things. So let's say you have multiple layers. Now I want to keep this really simple. So consider like a cake. You have multiple layers, and you have the bottom layer, which is the chocolate cake part. You have then some icing, and then maybe there's just another layer, and you have another layer of cake, and then another layer of icing, and then maybe some fruit, which is another layer. So all of those stack on top to make your photo. So in the right side here is your layers. Right now I just have one, and it's called the background. To make a copy of that, simply press Command or Control J, and you make a copy. So getting back to the move tool. If you have multiple layers, you can move them. So if right now I have the top layer, or layer 1 as it's labeled, selected, you can then move it. So I click it and I can move it around. That's on the move tool. When you only have one layer, you can't move just one layer. It's super simple, super easy. It allows you to navigate. Now another thing you can do to move is to press the space bar. This is to move the screen. So let's say you're zoomed in and you want to move to your left. Press the space bar. You'll see a little hand icon show up. Move over. So you see, now you can move throughout the screen, and it makes it really easy. All right, to zoom in and out, I'm pressing Control or Command minus and plus sign, just to make that super easy. I want to try and give you guys all of the data. It's gonna be a lot, so if you have to rewatch the video or pause it at times, that's totally fine. I'm just trying to compact a lot of basic data in a couple of videos. All right, so let's go on to the next tool. This next tool is the rectangular marquee tool. Now here's the fun thing about these tools. If you right click on the icon, you get more tools. Now this is something that it took me forever to figure out. People are like, oh, I'm using blah blah tool. I'm like, where's blah blah tool? I have no idea. And then I figured it out finally. So if you right click on them, you can get more. So for the rectangle tool, which is the hotkey M, so if you press M, you'll automatically select that one. So V for the move tool, M for the rectangular marquee tool. If you right click on it, you'll see you have a rectangle, you have an elliptical, you have a single row marquee tool, and a single column marquee tool. To be completely honest, I've never used the single row or the single column marquee tool. I've used the rectangle marquee tool, but very sparingly. But what this does is it allows you to select things. So if I draw a square over here, I have now selected this part of the image. These selection tools are really important because they allow you to be very specific when you're editing certain parts of the image. That's why we're going through this one first. So if you want to deselect something, like if I don't want to select this anymore, I can press Command or Control D, or I can right click and press deselect. The other thing you can do is if you want to select everything but what you have selected. So for example, I have this top part selected. If I want this entire bottom part selected, I can right click on it and press Select Inverse. And that selects everything that wasn't selected before. So if you're editing something and you're having trouble getting a certain selection, And the opposite selection is easier to select. You can then select that part and then switch over and select the inverse. So you select it backwards, if that makes sense. I'll show you an example of that once we get through some of the tools. So that is the rectangular marquee tool. Again, I haven't done much with that. Another cool feature with the selection tools, if you press Option, you'll notice that on my icon, a little minus sign has appeared. So if I hold Option and then select, let's say, this side here, it will then erase that part of the selection. And this works with any of the tools. All right, so let's move on to the next one, which is the lasso tool. And the hotkey for that is L. So press L and you select the lasso tool. This one has some cool features. It has the lasso tool, it has the Polygon Lasso tool, and it has the magnetic lasso tool, which I just discovered, which is super fun. So the lasso tool allows you to push, to click, and hold and drag around and select whatever you want. Now, if at any point you let go, it will automatically reconnect the start and the end point. Let's say I want to select just the sky. To be honest, this is not the exact tool I would use, but just to show you, you can actually click off of the image over here and start drawing, and you see the line automatically appears on the border. So you come down to here, come down to the horizon, and then you come over, and then we're gonna go up, blah, 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 around. Again, this is not the way I would do it, but just showing you an example. And then once you're over here on the top right, since you started in the top left, you can let go and it'll give you a perfect line across. Now, one of the really important things on select tools is the feathering. If I wanted to do an effect, but I wanted it to be feathered, I could then go up here to feather and I could add feathering to it. And the more I add, the smoother the transition. But you just kind of have to play with it depending on what you want. So let's say I had, let's make it 30 feathering, right? So then I'm gonna select this, just randomly select that. And there, that is the selection. And then let's just, for example's sake, I'm gonna do a little brush. What I did was I selected the brush tool. I chose red as the color. We have a feathering of 30 pixels. So what should happen is you should see a feathering outside of the line. Yeah, okay, there we go. So if you look really closely here, you'll notice that the red goes outside of the line. That's because the feather is so large. So let's do this again. Command Z, Control Z to undo. Command D or Control D to unselect everything. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the lasso tool. I'm gonna do the feathering of 10. So you saw the example of the feathering with 30. So let's do 10, do the same thing, and then we're gonna brush it. And if you zoom in, you'll notice that it's a lot less on the outside of the line. That's because the feathering is less. Now, if I did 0, there would be no color on the outside of the line. So it's really important to remember in editing. It makes some of your transitions and some color changes much smoother, but sometimes you don't want that effect. Okay, let's get out of all of this. Let's go to the next tool, which is the Polygon Lasso tool. Now this one's fun because you select a point, you click, you add a point, and then you can do a line anywhere you want. You then click another point, and then you can do another point, and you can basically draw any shape you want by just moving and clicking. And then when you're done, you go to the end point and you meet them. So you actually have to connect these. The feathering still applies, you see up here, feathering. And then the magnetic lasso tool is kind of the similar as the polygon tool, except it's magnetic. It's a smart tool. It kind of matches where you want. So let's say we want to do the rock here. Well, all I have to do is click one point and then it follows my cursor around, and it kind of artificially, intelligently guesses what I want to mask, and I can go all the way around here. You see how it's doing. But if I kind of go out of here, it'll think I want to go that way. So it's not flawless, but as long as you stick close to the rocks, you'll probably get a pretty accurate line. And then you have to go back to the point and click, and then there you go, there's your selection. That's kind of a cool tool. Haven't used it much, just kind of discovered it. Figured I'd show you because it's part of the selection ones. Okay, let's Command D to deselect, and let's go to the next image. Now, this is cool. We're going to go to the next tool, which is the quick selection tool. This is the one that I use by far the most, and it seems to be the most useful for me. The hotkey for this one is W, so let's go ahead and press W, and right click on the icon to see the other ones. You have the quick selection tool and the magic wand tool. I never use the magic wand tool, to be honest. I only use the quick selection tool. But here's a really cool feature of this one. Let's say you have this beautiful subject and you want to select just her. Well, up here in the top right, and just to clarify, I'm using Adobe Photoshop 2020. I'm not sure when they implemented this update. If you click Select Subject, well, it's smart enough to select the subject. Look at that. I did nothing and it selected the subject. It did make a little error here where it missed part of her hair. So if you notice, my cursor has a little plus sign on it, and you can't really tell. So the cursor right is default on the plus, so adding. So if I just click here, it will kind of select it. Sometimes it goes a little out of the way, but you can subtract that by pressing the Option button. Remember, Option click is erasing. So down here in the bottom left, if I press Option and then click here, it'll remove that, and then I need to add a little bit of the shirt. Okay, good, there we go. So there's my quick selection of my subject. Quick and easy. I love this tool. So good for editing and adding depth to mountain landscapes because you can select the mountain in the background and highlight it, and then select inverse and then darken the foremountain. It's beautiful. We'll get into that later once we get into the brush tool and things like that. Okay, so let's press Command or Control D to deselect, and we're gonna go to the next image, which is Folger, our husky, beautiful husky. And we're going to use the quick selection tool to not just use the select subject, which let's actually test it. Select subject. Okay, you see how it selected mainly him, but it also selected this here. We could press the Option and remove all of that. And there we go. Super quick and easy. But let's say it wasn't working and we wanted to select him. Well, you just take the quick selection tool and just drag it around him, and it will do its thing. It kind of matches the pixels and it matches the colors, and it's very, very smart. So you see, with just a few clicks, we have now selected him. Super easy. That's a cool tool. That's a really fun tool. That's the one I use by far the most. All right, and the last thing you can do is up here in the top right, there's Select and Mask. So if you click that, it'll open a different screen. Now on the right side here, I always have the red color. You can change the color to whatever you want. It really makes no difference. I just leave it at red, it's default color. Selected areas. So what this means is when you start selecting things on this image, it'll turn red. Now you can do masked areas, which is the opposite, the part that isn't selected, but I like to keep it selected because it makes sense to me. Selected areas, red, non-selected areas, normal, makes sense. And then you can change the opacity of the color however you want. Right here we have the other tools. We have quick selection tool, we have a refine edge brush tool, we have a brush tool, we have a object selector tool, and a lasso tool, and a hand tool, and a zoom tool. We have a lot of tools. So let's go through each one of these. So first, the quick selection tool is the same as before. It's gonna use the data it thinks the places you're clicking and kind of sample, and then it's gonna pick up those other ones. So if I wanted to select everything but the dog, just do that and then press the Option button to delete. So Option, I'm pressing Option and I'm selecting him to technically unselect him. Remember, red is what's selected in the mask. Oh wait, I need that. Okay, I need this stuff. So I let go of Option to add. Okay, so the next tool is the Refine Edges brush. So we're gonna select that. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna help us make our selection even more precise. So we're just gonna paint here, and you see how it kind of adds to where his fur is. It kind of adds a little bit more. This works really good on, like, if you're doing sky replacements or sky editing. So this is just kind of painting where the landscapes are and his hair isn't. We're just getting those greens. You see how it's adding that pieces of grass, stuff like that. And this works not all the time, but it's a good one to just kind of get more specifics. So I'm happy with that. Let's get a little here. It's not completely exact, but it works for now. The next tool is the brush tool. Now this is simply what it stands for. When you brush on paint, see, I can brush there. Good, I've added that to the mask. I can then delete it. So press and hold Option. It's a very blunt tool. So if you click here and drag, it's gonna give you a line. If you then If you then press Option and drag back, it's gonna take it off. It's not a precision tool for this specifically, but if you need to just cover places really quick, you can use the brush tool. The next is the object selection tool. This one allows you to draw objects and then it selects it. So if I were to want to select him, I can just draw a box around him, boom, it selects the whole box. If I wanted to remove a selection in a box area, I could do this, and there you go, it removes it. Now, I've never used this one. I'm not sure its use particularly. It just seems kind of blunt for me, and to be honest, I'm not sure why it's not just a square. So we're gonna move on to the next one. Go to the lasso tool. Now the lasso tool, same thing. If I circle this here, it'll select it. If I press Option and circle, it should remove that. Perfect. So that's just like the lasso tool in the original. And the hand tool is to move around the image, which you can hotkey press space. Let's say you're on this quick selection, you press space and you can move around. So that's never used that one either, except by pressing the space button. The search tool or zoom tool, that allows you to zoom in and out, Option to zoom out. What I use is Command plus or minus to zoom in and out. If you press Command or Control 0, let's say while you're zoomed in, if you press Command or Control 0, you'll zoom out to the full image. So once you've made your mask, you can then come over here and you can actually do little refinements to it. So let's zoom in to his edges here. Now, smooth, I'm not 100% sure what that does. I click it and it really doesn't do anything, so forgive me. Let's go on to feather. So feather is going to make the transition between the mask and the unmasked smoother or harsher. So if I click feathering, you see how it goes smooth into him around his edge. If I go really harsh, it even covers him because it's so smooth. If I go no feathering, it's what we had. So you can kind of adjust that. I think a little feathering would do good. It's all up to you when you're doing this. I haven't used this too much on my personal images because I usually want it super exact. The other thing is contrast. Contrast is the difference between mask and not. So let's say you add a lot of feathering and then high contrast. You're gonna see that selection be pretty harsh, but also with a feather. So contrast kind of takes away the feather. It makes it a little harsher line. It's usually with this, it's very small adjustments to get what you want. Here, this looks pretty good. I want a little feathering, but I don't want any contrast. Shifting the edges obviously moves them in and out. If I want them in, I just add Shift Edge and it brings the mask in. If I want it less masked, I do Shift Edge out and it brings it out. So again, it's totally up to you on what you want. You just kind of have to play with these tools for your specific image. The other thing you can do is you can invert it. So you have this whole selection. Let's say I want him selected only. I press invert and boom, now I have just him selected. Now once you have this all done, then you can press OK and there's your selection. You see? So all of that to do that selection, sometimes it's necessary, other times you don't even need to go into that. The quick keys that I'm using to enlarge and decrease my mouse selector is for a Mac, it's Control Option left click and swiping right and swiping left while holding clicking. For a PC, I'm not sure, but I think it's Controller Alt Option left click. You can Google it and find out. I'll put it on the screen. I'll Google it when I'm editing and I'll put it on the screen for you. But it's just an easy way to make your brush size or your selector tool bigger or smaller. So that's it for the selection tools. They are really simple to use, but they are super powerful and you'll find use in them a lot. I use them on almost every edit that I do to really get those precision colors. Now the last thing is the crop tool. We're just gonna go over it because it's simple, it's a crop tool. So it's this one here, press C to select it. Now if you right click on it, you have perspective crop tool, slice tool, and slice select tool. The slice select tool I have only used to do those panoramic pictures on Instagram. I will link the video in the description that will tell you how to use the slice tool, how I use the slice tool. We're not gonna get into that right now, but I simply use the crop tool. So you can adjust the crop if you want, just like this. If you go up in top left here, I have a preset, which is my YouTube thumbnail automatic. You have some ratios that are already saved in here, or you can enter your own. Just click ratio, and then you can enter, let's say, a square image. You can enter it in, and there you go. and it will resize as you need. Now you can make the crop bigger than the actual picture in Photoshop. This allows you to add things to the photo if you need more space. A lot of times I don't use this. I just simply find where it wants, and it should snap. Like it'll kind of magnetic to the original image, if you notice, to the edges. See how it kind of pops? So that it's finding that border. So then you adjust it and press enter when you have your selection. Now, if you press, while in the crop tool, if you click on the screen, if you don't see the crop thing, just click and it'll add that to it. If you wanna go back, if you don't like that crop tool, press Command or Control Z and you'll go back. And that, my friends, is all there is to it. Now, I say all there is to it, but we went over a ton of information. It took me a long time to kind of figure all this out. So I hope this makes it easier, kind of speeds things along for you. I personally have spent hours practicing with this, and it does take time. Like, to do the quick selection tool, it won't be perfect at first, but try not to get frustrated. Just continually practice and you'll kind of learn the feel of how it works. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. I will gladly help you out as best I can. In part 2, we're going over the spot healing brush and those tools and the clone stamp tool. It might be a little bit longer video. The reason I did this selection tool first is because we use a lot of these tools in that video. So really make sure you get to know this video, because I'm not gonna go over all of those tools in that video because it'll just make it super long. So watch this video as many times as you need. Comment for any questions or find me on Instagram and message me, totally fine. Otherwise, like this video if it helped you out. Don't forget to subscribe, because I do videos like this every Monday at 7 p.m. And as always, enjoy the journey that is exploring photography. I will see you guys next week.